All right, so let's talk about speech science. Um, wait, every time. There we go. So I also teach an entire course on speech science, which probably some of you will take next semester, I'm guessing. And this lecture is a really good kind of jump off point from there, for that class. So pheromones are really the only method of communication that is just for communication. And most mammals don't really have a ton of pheromones. It's usually something it's mostly relegated to insects. Insects use a lot of pheromones. Some animals have some pheromones, but not they're not used, in the same, like, this is the main method of communication as insects. And in fact, if you look at the brain, there is a nerve called the terminal nerve that is actually closer. It's above the the olfactory nerve, which is the first cranial nerve. So this is a term. It's like the zero nerve. So it's even higher up than the olfactory nerve, and a lot of neuroscientists believe that it actually is for processing pheromones, the very few pheromones that we actually have. It also may have shrank quite a bit during evolution, now that we don't use pheromones a ton. Anyway, all that to say, pheromones are really the only method of communication that is just for communication. It's just there to send a signal to something else. That's pheromones. But aside from that, everything else has been hijacked. Everything else that animals use to communicate has basically been hijacked from some other process. Breathing is one that usually gets hijacked. We talk by using the air that we breathe in to vibrate our vocal folds. This over here, this is is this an elk or a deer? I don't really totally remember what I typed in. I think it's an elk. This is their nasal cavity right here. Look at all these crazy sinuses in here. This is really, really amazing. What happens with these sinuses is, and these two large cavities right here, these resonant cavities, the elk is able to make its really distinctive, like, call because of the resonant cavities that it has inside of its nose, its nasal structure. It resonates like that and then allows it to make that noise that carries over a long distance. But it's basically hijacked breathing too. Dogs barking, frogs can scream, so can some lizards. This is all hijacking the breathing process. And then, of course, there are some animals that also, like, slap things. Like beavers will slap their tails. Can't remember. I think there's a certain amount of birds that will, like, they move, they do dances and things like that kind of our communication as well. There's a lot of body language communication among all animals, so maybe body language communication is almost as typical as hijacking breathing for communication. Of course, body language, originally we're just moving things with our arms, and then we use it to come up with communication. But anyway, breathing is one of the things that gets hijacked the most. Well, humans have perfected hijacking breathing for communication with the development of vocal folds. This allows us to put something in the stream of air and cause it to vibrate, and then we can use our effectors to mold that into different sounds. So you can see right here, these are two Neanderthals. Right here is what you want to look at. So the newborn infant and the Neanderthal have roughly the same shape to their vocal tract. So what we've ended up, what's happened with evolution is, this is an adult human right here. The head has kind of moved, well, not the head, but the vocal tract has moved back a little bit in relation to the head. It's straightened up. It's gotten a little bit longer. This allows us to be able to shape sounds more accurately. So we can have more different sounds capable of being produced. We can't really do this so well as infants, and so the Neanderthals were probably also not as good at this. But anatomically modern humans, you can see here, have a much longer larynx, which gives us a better control over molding the sound that comes out of the vocal folds. So this comes from the source filter model of speech. I think we've talked about this a lot. It's a really important thing. Breathing is the power source. The vocal folds are the sound source, and then the pharynx, mouth, nasal cavity, these are all resonators and articulators that mold the sound. Now, what I want you to look at right now is the video I'm going to throw up. You can't see it. So the video that I'm going to throw up, and then this guy kind of looks like he's about ready to throw up. But this is the one we want to look at first. What you're going to hear is, this is just going to create a buzz that sounds kind of like the buzz that the vocal folds give off. This is shaped, it's too old to be 3D printed, but essentially it's a 3D printed larynx. And it's put in the configuration of an actual vowel phoneme. When you hear it go from just the buzz to when this 3D printed thing is on it, you'll notice it's very strange. Alright, so that is exactly what happens here. We make a buzzing sound that kind of sounds like that. Our vocal folds make that buzzing sound. It was 130 hertz. Of course, we can change our pitch. That thing probably can too. It's just set at 130 hertz. But then the shape of everything coming up and going out of the mouth creates the ah, ooh, ee, all those different sounds. Here is a look at the actual vocal folds.
If beatboxing existed in the Dark Ages, I'm sure many of us would have found ourselves tied to a fiery pyre to be uncanny precision. So we paid a visit to a man with an impressive amount.
This is a flexible one, and that's 5 millimeters in diameter. That'll go through the nose, past the tonsils, down to the larynx.
Right.
And through that, on a large monitor, we'll be able to see all the movements, the actions, the activities of what goes on, not just in the larynx, but up in the base of the mouth, base of the tongue, and see how all that creates different sound. And in the second part of it's a rigid camera. It's about this long, and it'll go through the mouth, and it's a little like sword swallowing. It'll go down, but it's got a much higher resolution camera tip in it.
Right.
So that'll give a much clearer picture of what tissue is vibrating to make the sound that it does.
All right, cool. Well, maybe we should start by putting some things in my face.
Sounds good.
Warning, this video contains very graphic images from the depths of my throat. Stop eating now. You may vomit.
Yeah, it's delicious.
Okay, so you poke your tongue in straight out at me. Good. Just breathe through the mouth. Just try to say E. So the vocal cords look good. Nothing weird or abnormal or unusual. This is the flexible one. Now the only thing we...
So I'm going to replay that part again where he kind of drops down. The pitch drops down from really high to low. One of the things that you'll notice is, we talked about this in speech anatomy, when he's really high pitched, the vocal folds are stretched out a lot. Notice also the side to side, how wide they are. They're going to be stretched quite a bit, so they're pretty thin. And then as his pitch gets lower, you're going to notice that they come together, and that gets a little bit fatter on the sides too. It's like a rubber band, really. So let me go back and play that one more time.
Just breathe. Now go. Just breathe. So the vocal cords look good. Nothing weird or abnormal or unusual. This is the flexible one. Now the only thing we don't know is how much having a camera in the nose is going to interfere with.
I guess
You'll find out. Yeah. This is the other little microphone. We need that sort of near you. Okay, so let's look up the nose. There's not a lot of space up there,
Yeah.
which I'm sure you can feel.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So this is the back of the what's called the nasopharynx,
Wow.
and what you see coming up there, just go ka 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 ka.
I'm judging by everybody's reactions right now. It's looking pretty weird.
So that's the soft palate closing up against the nasopharynx. So you can imagine if you have a cleft palate or problems back there, that you wouldn't be able to close and make all that sound.
Yeah.
So now we see the larynx, and this is the bit where it might be difficult for you. And now what we're going to do is just watch and see what happens.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to do. You just have a swallow for me there.
It's certainly in there, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, so that's the vocal folds. And then you saw what the articulators can do by molding that into a sound. So the vocal folds have a lot to do, they're changing pitch, they're changing a little bit of the quality of the voice too. You saw in this one right here that there's a lot of difference in the way that they vibrate, not just how long they are, which changes the pitch. Longer is higher, shorter is lower, but also the way that they vibrate. How much air is behind them is going to change the loudness. You can also push them together very tightly and force a lot of air, and they'll slap together a lot faster. It's more of a grating sound, or you can let them be very relaxed, and it's more of a breathy kind of soft sound. So there's a lot to do with how they move that actually changes the quality of the source. But still, the effectors and the articulators are going to really create the actual different sounds that you've got going on. And also all of your consonants as well. Okay, so let's go back to my slideshow. There we go. Whoops. Okay, so you can think about this. If you play an instrument, there we go. It's not any different. So if you're having a hard time conceptualizing it, which if you're not, cool. If you are, then stick with me. Well, if you are and you play an instrument, stick with me. Otherwise, so breathing with any of these instruments is still the power source, right? You're still using breath to create sound. Now, on all of these, tuba, trumpet, things like that, the mouthpiece is the sound source, because you kind of go like, can't do it. You do that basically into the mouthpiece of these instruments. And so pushing your lips up against the mouthpiece and then making your lips vibrate by using the air then creates a buzz. And that buzz is then used to resonate differently in the instrument and create different sounds. So the rest of the instrument is all about resonating. It's all about creating the resonant sound of the different instruments. And then also you can throw a mute on the end of some of these. If you played French horn, you shove your fist in it, and that's kind of like a mute. That's like an articulator. The reason why some of those old jazz trumpets sounded like they would go wah wah is precisely the same reason why the mouth sounds like it goes wah wah. You're covering it up. You're covering the end of the sound. Wah wah. Just like that. You're covering the sound. It's stopped up. And then the way that it's released goes like from a w to an ah. Wah. So it's really pretty interesting. It works exactly the same way that speech and the speech effectors do. Okay, so, oh man, if I was at my office instead of at my house, because ASU is still closed, I have a, did I bring it? No. I have a duck call, and I put the duck call through, a tube, and I can change the size of the tube, and it changes the way that it sounds. It's the same duck call, different tube. The duck call is like our vocal folds, and the tube is like our articulators, and so I can change the way that the sound sounds. I can change the articulators for the sound and make it sound like a different vowel, even though it has the same source. But I don't have my duck call here. Well, anyway, what happens with the vocal folds? So what you're looking at here is, this is the throat, right? This is the larynx right here. This is going to be down the trachea. Lungs are down here somewhere. This is air coming out. These are the vocal folds. And so then this is slightly above the larynx. This is slightly below the larynx. Air is coming out. Here's the vocal folds. So pressure is going to build up behind the glottis. It's going to build up from the lungs coming out the trachea. It's going to build up behind the glottis. And what's going to happen is that pressure is going to force the vocal folds apart, just like that. There's things like the Bernoulli principle and elasticity that are going to force the vocal folds shut again. You don't really need to, at this point, know Bernoulli principle and elasticity is just the elasticity of the tissue. The tissue is being held together, it's being forced apart. And just like a rubber band, it wants to shut back to where you have it. Least resistance is where it is, so it wants to go back where it is. The Bernoulli principle you'll learn in 310, which you may or may not be taking with me. You might be taking it from somebody else right now. Okay, so air comes out, and then the Bernoulli principle, elasticity are going to shut the vocal folds again. Then this repeats. So it's gonna push out, it's gonna come back shut. Push out, come back shut. So you end up with these puffs of air, right? Well, these puffs of air create pressure waves, like this. So right here, you've got a puff of air escapes, and then you've got a drop in pressure because the vocal folds have come back together. And then the air has moved on, and now you have a low pressure zone right here on the other side of the glottis. Then it opens again, and you have a high pressure zone. And that leaves, and you have a low pressure zone. And that's going to keep repeating. So you've got high pressure, low pressure, high pressure, low pressure. If you think about it in terms of air molecules, it looks like this down here. You've got a lot of air molecules. The puff of air opens. There's a lot of air molecules. They move, and then you have fewer air molecules. Another puff of air, you have then a lot of air molecules, and they move out. So you set up this wave like this. This is called a sound pressure wave. it carries sound, and the way it carries sound is by having these differing zones of pressure. All right, so it's pretty much how all sound works, to some extent. I mean, it's not that much different than any other sound. Hang on one second, I'm going to get something. Okay, I have this recorder. This is the recorder that I played when I was in like 3rd grade. I just found it. I'm moving some stuff around. I don't know if you can see the mess that's behind me, but anyway, moving a bunch of stuff around, doing some home repair, and I found this, which has been in a box for probably, a long time. Okay, so what's going on here is basically, in a way, the same thing that happens in here with the vocal folds. So you can play a whole bunch of notes on that, right? What happens is I can't play anything if I put my finger over that hole right there. This hole is really important to be able to play the instrument. In fact, if I do put my finger over that hole, it's really hard to blow air out of this thing at all. It's really easy if you open that up. It's really hard if it's closed, but there's holes everywhere. It shouldn't be hard to blow air out of this thing. Well, what's going on is the air that you blow in gets to be too high in pressure inside. So it fills up with air, and then what happens is the air has to pop up out of this hole and come out here. Well, when this air has escaped from the chamber at the bottom, from the hole at the bottom, then there's less pressure inside, so the air that you're blowing in through the mouthpiece stops coming out through this hole and fills up the instrument again. Then when it gets filled, it comes back up. I mean, this happens really, really quickly. So if you were to look at it, it's kind of like a thing like that. And this is what creates the pressure wave. This is what creates the sound pressure wave for the instrument. Where you put your fingers makes it either fill up, take longer to fill up or less long to fill up. So if you have all of these pushed down, it takes a longer time to fill up, you have a lower sound because you're going to be vibrating less often. So then that relates to a lower sound. That's the same thing that happens in the larynx. If you shorten these, they vibrate slower. If you shorten the vocal folds, they vibrate slower, and so that leads to a lower sound. So this really works on the same principle, even though it doesn't have vocal folds. It still has this little mechanism right here that allows air to create a pressure wave. Things like the bassoon have 2 reeds, and that's very much like vocal folds. You've got 2 reeds together and they'll vibrate against each other like vocal folds. Saxophones and clarinets have 1, which kind of acts like a little bit like a kind of like a vocal fold flapping against something hard. And then you can think about guitars, which I have mine in here as well. You can see it over there, right there. I'm not going to get it out though. But anyway, you can hit a string and it'll vibrate, and the speed that it vibrates creates the sound that you hear, but its vibration is pushing air. So it's creating a sound pressure wave too. Everything that creates sound does so by setting up a sound pressure wave. It's all sound pressure waves, right? All sound travels in a wave, and the way that it does this is by pushing air. If it's a resonant sound, a constant sound, it's going to have to push air multiple times in a pattern. If it's like a slap or a clap of the hands, something like that, that's only one pressure wave. There's only one that reaches you, but it doesn't really have a tone to it. There's no pitch, there's no frequency, there's no nothing. It's just a slap. And the reason why it doesn't have a pitch or a frequency or anything like that is because it's just one sound pressure wave. All that happened was something happened. You can hear it, definitely the pressure moved the eardrum, it moved the hair cells in your ear, but inside the cochlea, but it didn't move them in a way that signified a pitch of any kind. So something that creates a pitch is going to have a sustained vibration at the same frequency. And you do that by having a sound pressure wave, and whatever's pushing the sound pressure wave is going to move consistently the same way for a time. All right. Oh, and whoops. Sorry. Subwoofers in your car, they kind of do the same thing. They move, they push the entire diaphragm of the speaker, and that sends a whole bunch of air, moving towards you. The reason they're so loud is because they're big. They push a lot of air, and that's why they're very loud. Okay, is there anything else I want to talk about? No, we talked about the string. Okay, great. So everything vibrates with a fundamental frequency. There's one fundamental frequency that everything vibrates with. There's a fundamental frequency for this, like this note has some fundamental frequency. And then it's also going to have harmonics on top of that. And the harmonics follow something called the harmonic series. The harmonic series is one of the easiest series to learn because it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and so on. What you do is you multiply, whatever the fundamental frequency is. So here, I'm going to guess that's about 500 hertz-ish. 550. It doesn't really matter. So if it's 500 hertz, and I want to figure out what the harmonics of this are, every sound has harmonics of some sort. And that's just the nature of sound. It'll vibrate at its fundamental frequency, and then it can also vibrate at 2 times the fundamental frequency, 3 times the fundamental frequency, 4 times the fundamental frequency. So if this has a fundamental frequency of 500 hertz, you're going to have the second harmonic at 1,000 hertz, 500 times 2. You're going to have the third harmonic frequency at 1,500 hertz, then 2,000, then 2,500, then 3,000, and so on. That's the harmonic series. Those overtones are really the basis for being able to change the timbre of the sound. So I don't have a great picture of this. I do have a picture of the different harmonics of sound. So this is, if you visualize a guitar string vibrating, this is the fundamental. The string could be bowed all the way out. It's hooked down at 2 ends, but it could be bowed all the way out at the top. And then it could also cross itself. It could, it could have like a full wave in there where it goes down, comes back and crosses the midline, and then comes up, and it's still held down at these 2 ends. It could have 3 partial waves. It could have 4 partial waves, or also known as 2 full waves right here. So this is a half wave. This is a full wave. It's a full wave because you've got down and up right here. And a full wave is going to take you down and up. You want to go the full route of the wave. So this right here, this is just half because it's either up all the way or down all the way. So that's just half a wave cycle. This up and down, that's a full wave. Here you've got up, down, up. It's 3 half cycles or 1 full cycle and a half cycle. So anyway, those are the harmonic partials. So do I have this on the next slide? I don't. So for changing timbre, all of your harmonic partials are going to get a little bit less strong as you go from the fundamental frequency. So if the fundamental frequency is right there, that's a little bit higher. That might have been 550. So if you start there, then all of your harmonics are going to be a little bit less loud than that fundamental frequency that you hear. Actually, what you're hearing is the fundamental frequency plus all of the harmonics. They're all there. If it was just a fundamental frequency, it would sound like a sine wave. If you don't know what a sine wave is, I'm going to play one for you in a second. So this has harmonics with it. And the strength of those harmonics changes the timbre. I can change the timbre. Let's see. Can I change the timbre? Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if you can hear this, but this changes the timbre somewhat. Just by touching the end. It changes the shape, so it changes the way that the sound is able to move around in there. Different harmonic partials are amplified or dampened. The change in those is kind of what happens in our larynx. So we can make our larynx wider, narrower, and we can use our tongue to be in different places. So if you say E versus E, go E, Notice where the back of your tongue is for all of those. E is very high, a little lower, is very low. And so that change in shape is what causes that change in sound from E, and the same way that putting my finger over that, the bottom hole down there, changed the sound of the instrument. Because what you're doing is you're changing the strength of all of those different partials. I'll show you what I mean in a second. Okay, so changes in pitch, it's not really that difficult. Let's see, what am I saying here? Oh, there's really, okay, this is really cool. This is amazing. So, we've talked about the frequency. The frequency is the fundamental. It's how many times you can get through one full cycle in a second. That is called hertz. And so we talk about sound in hertz. A low pitch tone is like 100 hertz. A high pitch tone might be like 5,000 hertz, something like that. So that's how many cycles of a wave can fit in 1 second. That's hertz. Pitch is the psychophysical correlate of frequency. So frequency is what we can measure. That's how many, that's the actual frequency of the sound. How many cycles per second. Pitch is what we experience. We hear something. Usually it correlates really well with frequency, but not always. The pitch that we hear out of a complex tone, and a complex tone is a fundamental and one or more harmonic partials, is usually the fundamental frequency. We're able to pull the fundamental frequency out. And here is what's totally crazy. You can listen to a sound that is like, you can listen to a fundamental and then the next 3 harmonics and it'll sound like the fundamental. You could take away the fundamental frequency entirely. Then you only have 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. And what do you hear? 500. You still hear the fundamental frequency even if it's not there. I'll play that for you in a second too. But here's the thing. I say pitch is usually correlated with frequency, and usually it is. usually you hear pretty much the same thing that the frequency actually is, but not always, because our perception of pitch is influenced by the intensity of the sound, the timbre of the sound, and other things that we haven't even figured out yet. My research, so we've known about intensity and frequency. We know that intensity can influence our perception of frequency. It can influence pitch perception. We didn't really know that timbre could influence pitch perception until I did my dissertation. That was one of the big things, that I contributed to the literature was timbre influences pitch perception. The change from an E to an so going if you keep the fundamental frequency the same, people perceive that as both a 0.8 decibel increase and a 0.33 semitone change. So we hear this as a change in frequency and a change in pitch, as well as a change in timbre. So I was pretty excited about that. Okay. Did we talk about this already, possibly? We sort of did. I'm going to go over it anyway. So here's high frequency. You can see how these vocal folds are stretched very tightly. And then we have low frequency, and you can see how they're much closer together, right? The opening is a lot smaller. The vocal folds are not stretched as tightly. They're a little bit wider. So if you play guitar, you know that your thickest string is your lowest string. And that's because a thicker guitar string has more cross-sectional mass. It vibrates more slowly. The vocal folds on the right also have more cross-sectional mass. If you were to cut my guitar string, my lowest guitar string, right in the middle and look at it, it's a lot fatter than the high guitar string, which is very small. The same is true for your vocal folds when you're producing a low sound versus a high sound. If they're wide, you can cut them and look through and they're wide. But if they're pulled really tightly, they're going to be very small. You're stretching them all the way out, so there's a lot less cross-sectional mass. Having more cross-sectional mass means that they're going to vibrate slowly. More cross-sectional mass vibrates more slowly, so it produces a lower sound. A tighter guitar string also has more elasticity. So the tighter it is, you can take that same really thick guitar string and tighten it a lot, and then when you flick it with your pick or your finger, it's going to sound a lot higher than if you let it be really wobbly. You can do this with a rubber band at home if you don't have a guitar, but just pull a rubber band or even a piece of string and pluck it as you pull it out. It's going to get a lot more high pitched. You're changing the cross-sectional mass and you're changing the elasticity. So the cross-sectional mass gets less, and then also you're pulling on it more, so it's a lot tighter. It wants to come back to midline faster after you pull it away and vibrate a lot more quickly. So both of those things contribute to a change in pitch. And this is exactly what happens to the vocal folds as well. What am I talking about there? Okay. So think about Mariah Carey. She sings extraordinarily high notes, right? There's some really cool evidence that shows that when singers like her go all the way up to the very top of their vocal register, they actually have to use different muscular contractions to shorten the amount of vocal fold that they're using. So think about it. If you go from, let's say, this is really low pitch and you can stretch it out like this, and this is really high pitched, this is your range. Well, how do you extend your range? So what these people do is they use muscular contractions to kind of like pull these sides so tightly together that they don't move. And now you've just got down here. So these are here, but they're pulled so tightly together they don't move. Now you've just got this area down here that I'm looking through. So you can go low with it, but not quite as low, and you can go really high with it. It's stretched about as much as it would be if you were all the way out, but it's a smaller area. And so by using this less area, much smaller area, they're able to get like an entire second register out of their voice by using those muscular contractions. It's amazing. If you try singing really high, like a falsetto tone, and then try coming down into your normal range, you're probably going to break somewhere in there. You can feel different strain. You can feel something happening. And this is probably the muscles relaxing and taking you back into your typical register from this little tiny amount of opening that you have. If you're a really good singer, you've learned how to do this smoothly, and you can't tell when you go from one register to the other. Okay, so we're getting pretty close to the end here. We need to talk about voice patterns. So we know that speech begins as just buzzing vocal folds. This might be the same video. If it is, we don't need to watch it again. Yes, it's the same video. Okay, I don't know why I put it on there twice. So then the articulators and the resonators are going to change the cavity that we have. And so it's going to, remember from the harmonics, it's going to accentuate some of those, it's going to dampen some of those. It's going to set up peaks of energy. Those peaks of energy are called formants. This right here, this is a program called Audacity. And what you're looking at here is me saying something. I don't remember what I said. But you can see that there's a dark stripe right here. That dark stripe is a formant. Then there's another stripe about here. That's another formant. So what's going on with formants? It's basically this. So here is a fundamental frequency and a whole bunch of harmonics to that sound. This is what's produced by the vocal folds. Now here are your articulatory areas, right? So this is like the probably the larynx right here, or well, actually no, sorry. This is the pharynx right here. This would be your pharynx, which is this part above the larynx back in here, your throat, essentially. This red box right here would be the oral cavity, and this green box right here would be the nasal cavity. So the sound, this sound right here, this fundamental frequency and a whole bunch of harmonic partials are fed through these boxes. Some of those sounds are going to resonate with those boxes. Some of those sounds are the fundamental frequency that perfectly resonates with that box. So what happens is those frequencies get amplified. And then frequencies that don't resonate well in there get dampened. So you can think about it as this little graph right here. So this box will accentuate, it'll dampen frequencies until you get to about here, and then it'll accentuate these frequencies. And then when you get back here, it starts dampening again. And each one does the same thing, but with a different center frequency. And so then what comes out of the mouth is a sound that looks like this. It still has the same fundamental frequency, and it still has all of the harmonic partials, but their amplitudes have changed. How tall each bar is, how loud each harmonic partial is, has changed. So now instead of looking like this, it looks like this. And so this is the shape of the sound that comes out of the mouth. Each of these peaks is what we call formants. And every vowel and semi-vowel, which is a consonant that kind of sounds like a vowel, like ul and Well, actually is a vowel, sorry. But ul a L, right? It's a liquid consonant, but it kind of works like a vowel. So e, u, u, these all have their own particular formant configuration. Oh, and here again, this is, I think this is me saying e and ah. So this is the difference between e and ah. Or rather, ah and e, I think. Yes. E and ah. Nope. Yes, e and ah. Yeah. So you've got this really bright one here. This is probably the fundamental. And then you can see here's the first formant, here's the second formant. This one, the first and second formants might be very close together, so close that we can't really resolve them. But that's what we're looking at here, these peaks of energy at certain frequency bands. This is translated over here as a band of frequency that's very bright. The brighter it is, the more power it has, the more power that frequency has. So these bright streaks are those really high amplitude frequencies, or formants. Okay, so I want to show you more about, oh, there, I actually had, so this is ah, I was wrong. This is ah, and this is e. It's hard to tell when I'm zoomed out to the point where I can't see any of the formants for e. But essentially, you can see that there's format 1, format 2, format 3 for ah. And each different vowel is going to have a different pattern, a different relationship between all those different formats. Okay, so I'm opening Audacity. There we go. And I want you to see a few things. So first, I'm going to go to generate tone, 200 hertz tone. Yeah, that sounds good. This is a sine wave. This is what a sine wave sounds like. If you don't know, this is a sine wave. A 200 hertz sine wave. Okay, so now let's add some harmonics. What is the, so this is the fundamental frequency. It's also considered the first harmonic. What's the second harmonic of a 200 hertz fundamental frequency? The harmonic series is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, keep on going. The second harmonic would then be 2 times the fundamental. So in that case, it is 400. 2 times 200 is 400. So we're going to generate now a 400 hertz tone. What's the next frequency? What's the third harmonic partial? 600, yeah. So we're going to do 600. What's the next one? 8. Okay, so now we've got 200, 400, 600, and 800. So here is a complex tone. Sounds a lot like the buzzing sound that we got from the larynx in that video. So if we could put on top of this a little thing, an articulator that's made to look like, made to be the same shape as an E or an ah, it would sound like an E or an ah. Okay, now here's what's going to drive you nuts. Listen to that sound. What's that pitch? Hum it if you need to. Okay, I'm going to solo this track, which means this is the only one I'm going to play. Are those the same pitch? Absolutely, they're the same pitch. They have a different timbre because one is just a 200 hertz tone and one is 200, 400, 600, 800. So the timbre is the difference there, but clearly they have the same pitch. Okay. Now I'm going to get rid of the 200 hertz tone. Here's with it still there. Now let's get rid of it. It's not even there, and it still sounds like a 200 hertz tone. Those are the same pitch, but the 200 hertz tone, gone. Let's see if it works when we only have two. I'd say all those were the same pitch. So we can even have two, the higher two harmonic partials, and still it sounds like 200 hertz. Even though we don't have 200 hertz, we don't have 400 hertz. Still sounds like 200 hertz. That's called virtual pitch or pitch of the missing fundamental, any of these things. It's some really interesting thing that our ears do, way that we process sounds. Okay, the last thing I want to do is I'm going to get rid of these, and we're going to record. We're going to record this thing that I'm saying. Okay. So now I'm going to... No. I'm going to turn this into a spectrogram. It's called a spectrogram when you look at, the spectrum of speech, the frequency spectrum of speech. There we go. So, what you can see here, let's zoom in once. Yeah. All right, so we can play this back. We're going to record this. Okay, so you can see a difference in the organization of these formants, right? You can see this one kind of swoops down and comes back up. This one's kind of like a Nike swoosh. This one just goes almost straight up. So you can see that there's a difference in all of these formants. That's the acoustic signature of speech. When you get really good at this, if you take 375 with me, you'll be able to look just at this and have a really good idea of what it is that I'm saying. Let me do one thing really quickly. This will give us an even better... Yeah, there we go. So the fundamental frequency is probably down here around 100. That's usually where my fundamental frequency is. Some words are lower, some words are higher. And then you can see this right here is probably the first format, this really bright one right here. This is probably the first format, although it looks like it might kind of swoop down just a little bit. So they're all different. Each word, each sound, each phoneme is different from all of the other ones. The formants are different. The placement of the formants are different. You can also see that there are some things like this S right here that don't even look like they have formants. Well, they don't. It's an S. It's just like kind of a noise signal. You can see all this energy up here in the high frequency spectrum. So this is the word this. This. So this is the I right here. This is a vowel. It has formants, really, very strong formant here. Here's another formant, and here's another one. The TH sound, the, right here, it's got a few formants, but that's because it's a this, so it's got phonation to it, but it's really closed off. There's not a lot of sound escaping. So you do have, you can hear it and you can see it. There's some sort of energy going on, but it's being filtered, so really only the low frequencies are coming out. Then we go to I, and then S, which again is like a noisy signal, and you can see all this energy up here in the high frequency spectrum. So we can use this to decode What's this? This looks like maybe a... I don't remember what I said. But this looks like maybe a k or a t. Something like that. Oh, it was a t. Okay. So the way that you can tell is there's kind of this really dark line that comes all the way down. It's an explosion of sound. T, k, p. All of those are going to have like an explosion of sound right here, right at this edge. And then it goes to... So then you have the oo right here. So this is called a spectrogram. This is what we use to analyze speech. Analyze the formants of speech. By analyzing the formants of speech, we can get an idea about what's going on with the articulators and the resonators. So the articulators are the tongue, the teeth, the lips. The resonators are the pharynx, the nasopharyngeal cavity, all those velopharyngeal cavity. So by looking at these, we can get a really good idea of what's actually going on in the mouth and the nasal cavity and the larynx and things like that. We can use this to diagnose a whole bunch of different disorders. We'll save that until 375, although when we talk about cleft palate next week, I'm going to show you the difference between normal speech and cleft palate speech with a spectrogram. You'll be able to tell that there's a large difference. Okay, that's the end of this lecture. It's also the end of this week's material. So there's going to be a quiz, and that's it. I'll see you next week.